I want to thank you all so much for the comments on my last video because y'all are literally changing my life. Y'all let me know that there is new legislation in Parliament. It's called C3. And y'all were like, Jen, you could be a Canadian citizen. And they're calling people like my grandma lost Canadians. If all goes well, if all goes through, I will be a Canadian citizen. So anyway, okay, I want to wrap this video up by telling you my idea for the video that I want to put up next week. I've been getting a lot of comments from Canadian citizens who do not understand why the heck I would want to move to Canada. That there are Canadians that you're being directed from. Like there's videos of Canadians that are moving to the US that are really unhappy. Why in the world would I want to leave the US to go to Canada?
Hi, I'm Jen and I do things. And I have stories to tell you today about myself and my family's immigration to Canada. We are moving to Vancouver Island next summer. That is the plan. But this is not an easy process, friends. This is not an easy process. And I wanted to talk to you about what's happening, what's the update since last time. Before I tell you what happened this week, I do want to once again thank you all so much for keeping me on track, because as a trained educator, my instinct is to always be trying to explain things. And y'all are like, Jen, we understand. The vast majority understand politically why I would like to move to Canada. So in that, a lot of you encouraged me. You were like, Jen, we get it. You'll need to go into all that. So I'm not going to go into all that. But what I do want to make sure that I stress is that the political climate here in the US is not the only reason why my family and I want to move to Canada. We want to move there because it seems to fit our family better, just overall on its face. People born and raised in Canada were raised differently, raised under a different system, and that leads to a different mindset when it comes to community and the way that we talk to each other and the way that we treat each other. And of course, no country is a monolith. There's going to be people everywhere that are just not nice people. Also, we understand Canada is not a utopia, that things are not going to be perfect there, that there are systems that need to be fixed. There's systems that need to be fixed in every single country. No country is perfect. But overall, from all of the research that we've done, Canada just seems like a better fit for my family. And that's the main reason why we want to move there. So let's talk about the things that I've learned about Canada and about our immigration process since the last time I talked to you. First thing is I've been looking into Bill C3, which would expand Canadian citizenship through what you all are calling lost Canadians, which is my grandmother. One thing that's really, really cool is that I got a phone call from Don Chapman. Huge part, if not, he's the driving force behind this Bill C3 that could grant me and possibly my children Canadian citizenship before we move. I talked to him on the phone and he was absolutely lovely and he answered all of my questions, and he actually volunteered to call me, which is wild to me that like actually happened in my life. Like I'm like in shock, but he's been so incredibly helpful in educating me and helping me to learn and understand why things are the way they are and the heart behind C3. And what he explained to me was that it really is at its heart about women's rights and women being stripped of their citizenship, like my grandmother was when she married my grandfather because he was a US citizen. Canada stripped her of her citizenship because she was then seen as his property. I'm just starting to learn about these things, so I have absolutely no right to advise or to really have a true opinion on C3. All I know is that I'm very thankful that C3 exists, and I'm very thankful for the way it could impact me and my family, but I'm hoping that it won't impact Canadian culture in the way that some lawmakers think it will. Now, going through this process myself, one thing that is really apparent to me is that I don't think that a lot of people will take Canada up on the citizenship, because there is a barrier to entry in that you do have to go through the proper channels in order to claim your Canadian citizenship, which is what we've been going through this week. And that's another thing I wanted to update you on. So last I left you, we were trying to get my grandmother's birth certificate. She was born in Kapuskasing, Ontario, and in order for us to apply for citizenship, we have to have that birth certificate. My dad doesn't have it, my aunt doesn't have it, my uncle doesn't have it. My grandmother died about 25 years ago. So when all this went down, I was working. So my husband was talking to my parents through a video chat to try to work out, what they should do, because my dad has to apply for all of this stuff as being the first living descendant of my grandmother, right? They went through the whole thing to try to get my grandmother's birth certificate until they hit a roadblock. Let me just tell you why we all freaked out, because this was when I came into the room from working and saw what was going on. So what we need is a guarantor. And remember, they're like 75% through this application when they hit this. And it says on the ontario.ca website, who can be a guarantor? They must be a Canadian citizen. So we have to know a Canadian citizen. We have to know them personally for at least 2 years, and they have to work in or be a member of an approved occupation or profession in Canada. And that was when we were like, we are out of luck. My dad's like, but my cousin. We're like, Dad, she's retired. She doesn't count. she has to be working in one of these professions. So I'll put the professions on the screen for you so you can see them. But it's like mayor, a notary, a signing officer at a bank, a judge, the principal or vice principal of a primary or secondary school, a minister of a religion. We don't know any of these people. We were like, oh my gosh. And you have to have known them for 2 years. So it's not like one of y'all could be like, yeah, I'm a minister, I can totally hook you up. It can't be like that. So we're freaking out right now. We're not sure how this is going to work out. But anyway, so as we dug more, we realized that we can work through US notaries in order to get to Canadian notaries in order to get the birth certificate. So there is a path that doesn't involve us knowing a Canadian in a specific profession for 2 years. So that was a huge relief. What we have to do is we have to write a letter of explanation of why we don't have a guarantor. And we're working all of that out now. We're getting there. The other thing is, when I talked to Don Chapman on the phone, he was saying that we should probably get in our citizenship stuff for myself and my kids as soon as possible, even if we don't have the birth certificate, to try to get it in now. And that way we're at least in the system, and then we can always submit the birth certificate later. We do have my father's birth certificate, which has my grandmother's name on it, and it says her birthplace. We also have her baptismal record, which is really cool to see. And we have her naturalization papers of when she became a US citizen officially. So we have a lot of stuff. We just don't have the birth certificate. So I also am I have to drive about 45 minutes into Washington, D.C. in order to get my fingerprints taken. It's kind of a bonus, but I want to make sure that when I submit this paperwork, that the Canadian government knows that I'm not a criminal, that I have no criminal record, and that they don't have to worry about that with me. So I'm going to go and get that piece of paperwork as well, just as an extra bonus. So things are moving along, and I am still so excited about this process. Yes, it's a lot. Yes, it's a lot of work, but the thought of becoming a Canadian citizen it still makes my heart so happy, and it still gives me butterflies in my stomach. And I'm just really just thankful to be able to even be a part of this process and to have the opportunity to possibly move to Canada. Another thing I wanted to share with you that I looked up this week to learn more about is curling. I have to say I have not really delved into like the rules or watched a game or anything yet, but that's something I want to educate myself on. Thankfully, I do have a base knowledge of hockey from high school. I had some friends that were really into hockey in high school. My mom's sister is actually really into hockey. My brother was. So I do have some knowledge of hockey and basics, but not enough to fit in. The other thing that I looked up, which I'm sure y'all will find amusing, is I always wondered this, but I never looked it up. what is the difference between the French that people speak in France versus the French that's spoken in Canada? And I remember when my brother was in high school, he took French because he wanted to talk to my grandmother. And then he would come to my grandmother's house and try to speak to her in French. And she didn't really understand a lot of what he was trying to say. And he didn't understand what she was trying to say. And there was a huge disconnect there. One thing I'm struggling with, though, is I wanted to download some kind of app or resources to see if I could start learning French on my own, the Canadian French on my own. So please let me know if you have any suggestions about that. I know that there are probably classes that I can take once I move there, which is something that I would love to do. You all also recommended to look out for volunteer opportunities, which I would also love to do, especially maybe something in a school. Since I am a trained teacher, I think that that might be really fun to volunteer and help out in a school. Don't ask me to teach the metric system, though, because that's something that I am still learning, and or government, things like that. But there are definitely things I'm sure that I could help with, even if it was just a matter of like making materials for a kindergarten teacher. I think that I could do that. So, anyway, that is the update for this week. I will be updating you in a few days when I have more information. Thank you so much for following me on this journey. I got a notification and I'm so mad I didn't screenshot it. You know, the little hype thing that they've put on YouTube? Y'all gave me so many of the hype points that I was like number 74 in Canada for hype points last month. And I was like, wait, what? That is so cool. So if you happen to have that hype button and if you want to hit it, I think you get like 3 hype votes a day or something like that, where you can basically tell YouTube this is a good channel and I'm enjoying watching it. So if you want to do that, that helps me get more visibility. And the majority of people watching this channel are from Canada. I think it's like 75%. So I think that's really, really cool. But thank you so much for watching and for following along. And I hope you continue to be happy and healthy and safe wherever you are. And I'll see you soon. Bye.